I must be quick. They need this. No one is here.
Here, take a sip, Julian.
It's warm.
There's enough for all of you.
Oliver?
Take it, little ones.
I came to save you.
We're not running.
Why?
Night settled over Iron Moon Citadel beneath a sky where no stars dared to shine. The kitchens had long fallen silent. The great ovens glowed with fading embers while exhausted servants disappeared into narrow sleeping quarters hidden behind endless stone corridors. Only one lantern still burned. Alara quietly ladled warm broth into 3 small wooden bowls. The aroma of chicken, herbs, and freshly baked bread drifted through the empty kitchen. She paused, listening. Nothing. Only the crackle of dying firewood. She tore soft bread into tiny pieces and soaked them until they became easy enough for a child too weak to chew. The smallest bowl received a little warm goat milk. Not too much. He coughed yesterday. Her fingers trembled as she covered each bowl with worn linen. This had become her secret ritual. Every night. Always after the palace slept. Always when the guards grew careless. Always hoping she would not arrive too late. She slipped the bowls beneath her faded apron before gathering an old blanket from a forgotten storage shelf. The blanket smelled faintly of smoke. It was cleaner than the stone floor where the children slept. Outside the kitchen, the western hallway remained almost completely dark. Most servants avoided it. They believed ghosts wandered there after midnight. Alara knew better. Ghosts did not cry from hunger. Living children did. She crossed the deserted pantry and stopped beside a cracked stone pillar carved with ancient wolves chasing a silver moon. Her grandmother had once pointed toward the carving. Some doors disappear only because people stop looking for them. At the time, Alara had laughed. Now those words guided every careful step she took. Her fingertips searched beneath centuries of dust until they found a rusted iron ring hidden behind loose stones. She pulled gently. A narrow passage opened just wide enough for one person to squeeze through. Cold air rushed against her face. The smell of damp earth mixed with forgotten memories. She slipped inside before quietly closing the entrance behind her. Darkness swallowed everything. Only her lantern painted weak circles of gold across the stone tunnel. Water dripped somewhere far ahead. The palace above celebrated wealth, music, and royal tradition. Beneath it lay silence. The tunnel twisted beneath ancient foundations older than the kingdom itself. Her shoulders brushed rough stone as she crawled through the narrowest section. Halfway through, footsteps echoed overhead. She froze. Voices drifted through cracks in the ceiling. Still checking the haunted wing? A servant ought to fear ghosts. Another guard laughed. If ghosts eat kitchen scraps every night, they have expensive taste. The men continued walking. Neither bothered investigating. Fear often became the strongest lock. Once their voices faded, Alara continued forward. Minutes later the passage widened into a forgotten chamber. Moonlight slipped through a broken window high above. Dust floated through the pale silver beam like tiny spirits dancing in silence. The room had once belonged to children. Painted wolves still chased stars across faded walls. Small wooden toys rested untouched upon crooked shelves. A rocking horse leaned against one corner with one missing leg. Everything had been abandoned. Everything except the 3 boys waiting quietly near the cold fireplace. The oldest rose first. He was no more than 7. Thin. Watchful. His golden eyes never left Alara as he stepped between her and his younger brothers. Every movement carried the instinct of someone forced to become older far too soon. Behind him stood a smaller boy clutching a cracked wooden wolf. The youngest remained wrapped inside an oversized blanket. His cheeks had lost their healthy color weeks ago. Yet when he recognized Alara, his tired eyes brightened. "You came back. I promised I would." She lowered herself onto the floor instead of approaching. She always let them decide the distance. Trust could never be demanded. Only earned. She uncovered the first bowl. Warm steam filled the room. The younger boy inhaled deeply. His stomach growled loud enough to embarrass him. Alara smiled softly. Mine did the same while I carried dinner. The smallest prince giggled. The sound barely lasted a second. It was enough. The room suddenly felt less lonely. The oldest continued watching. Carefully. Patiently. Alara lifted a spoon and tasted the broth herself. See? Nothing dangerous. Just soup that desperately needed more salt. The younger boy almost smiled. The oldest waited another moment before finally nodding. Only then did the others move closer. He accepted the bowl first. Instead of eating, he handed it to his youngest brother. You first. The little boy shook his head. Together. The eldest sighed with exaggerated seriousness before dividing the bread between them. No one argued after that. For several peaceful minutes the forgotten nursery held only the quiet sounds of hungry children eating as slowly as they could manage. Alara watched the youngest carefully. His hands still trembled. He leaned against her shoulder without realizing it. She adjusted the blanket around him. You should rest after dinner. Will you still be here? Until you fall asleep. Promise? Promise. The oldest finally spoke again. Why do you keep coming? Because someone should. You don't even know us. I know enough. He frowned. What do you know? That brave boys should never have empty bowls. Silence settled once more. This time it felt gentler. Outside, somewhere deep within the palace, a massive wolf released a long mournful howl that rolled across the night like distant thunder. All three boys stiffened. The eldest immediately pulled his brothers closer. Alara slowly looked toward the sealed stone wall. The howl came again. Closer. Much closer. Somewhere beyond the forgotten passage, powerful footsteps echoed through ancient corridors. For the first time in many months, something inside the abandoned western wing had awakened. And it was following the scent of family. The howl echoed once more. This time it did not sound distant. It came from somewhere directly above the forgotten nursery. Dust drifted from the ceiling. The youngest prince buried himself against Alara's side. Theo whispered. They found us. Julian immediately pulled both brothers behind him. No. Not yet. His voice was barely louder than breathing. Stay behind me. Alara slowly stood. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her face remained calm. She moved a few steps toward the hidden passage leading back to the palace. Another sound followed. Heavy footsteps. Not hurried. Confident. Each step carried enough weight to shake loose centuries of dust from the old stone walls. Then came another sound. Not a growl. A desperate whine. An enormous wolf. Not hunting. Searching. The strange mixture confused Alara. Predators did not cry like that. The great wolf stopped directly outside the hidden wall. Silence. Only breathing. Deep. Steady. Patient. Julian slowly reached for the broken chair leg he always kept nearby. Theo picked up a cracked wooden toy as though it might somehow become a weapon. Little Oliver simply wrapped both arms around Alara's waist. She rested one hand gently on his hair. Everything will be all right. She hoped the lie sounded convincing. Outside the wall came the scrape of claws against stone. The ancient hidden door shuddered. Again. Harder this time. Whoever waited beyond possessed incredible strength. Stone dust scattered across the nursery floor. Then came a man's voice. Cold. Controlled. Open this wall. No answer. Another strike echoed through the hidden passage. The old locking mechanism groaned beneath the force. Alara had never heard anyone discover the entrance before. She knew she could never stop whoever stood outside. Julian raised his head. "Don't let them take us again." His words struck deeper than any weapon. "Take us again." Alara suddenly understood. These children had not simply been abandoned. Someone had hidden them. Someone powerful enough to bury 3 royal heirs beneath their own palace. The realization sent a chill through her entire body. Another impact. The rusted lock cracked. Ancient iron finally surrendered after years of decay. The stone door slowly opened. Cold air flooded the nursery. Darkness filled the narrow passage beyond. Then 2 glowing golden eyes appeared. Not human. A wolf. Massive. Black fur-covered shoulders broad enough to block the entire tunnel. Scars crossed its muzzle. One ear carried an old tear from countless battles. Instead of charging forward, the wolf simply stood motionless. Its nose lifted into the air. It smelled the room. The broth. The old blankets. The frightened children. Then it found something else. Family. The giant wolf released another broken whine. Not toward Alara. Toward the children. Behind the wolf stepped a man dressed entirely in black traveling armor. No royal cloak. No jeweled crown. No ceremonial sword. Only battle-worn steel still stained from distant war. His face remained expressionless. Dark hair rested against tired eyes that had clearly forgotten what peaceful sleep felt like. Everything about him radiated authority. Not the loud authority of men who demanded obedience. The quiet certainty of someone the battlefield itself obeyed. His gaze swept across the nursery. The broken beds. The empty fireplace. The wooden bowls. The thin children. Then his eyes stopped. Julian. Theo. Oliver. Time itself seemed to stop breathing. The man's face lost every trace of composure. His sword slowly slipped from numb fingers before striking the stone floor. Julian's entire body stiffened. He knew that face. He had not seen it for months. But he remembered. Father. The word never left his mouth. Instead he stepped forward. Directly in front of Alara. Golden light flashed inside his eyes. Small claws emerged from trembling fingertips. His young wolf instinct fought desperately against exhaustion. A weak growl escaped his throat. Not aimed at Alara. At the man standing in the passage. The warrior remained perfectly still. His breathing became uneven. His eyes slowly dropped toward Julian's wrists. Dark burns circled both arms. Royal silver. Old scars. Scars no child should ever carry. The man's face turned pale. Julian. His voice cracked beneath the weight of a father's heartbreak. Julian did not lower his claws. She didn't do it. The words surprised everyone. Even Alara. Julian never looked away from the stranger. She found us. She fed us. She stayed. Silence swallowed the room. The great black wolf slowly walked past its master. Instead of approaching the children, it lowered its enormous head beside Oliver. The smallest prince trembled. The wolf sniffed him gently before letting out another soft cry. Its golden eyes closed. As though mourning everything the little boy had suffered. The armored man finally stepped inside. Each movement remained painfully slow. He looked less like a king entering his palace than a father walking into the ruins of his own life. He stopped several feet away. Oliver hid behind Alara. Theo clung to Julian. None of the boys moved toward him. The distance between them felt wider than the battlefield he had just crossed to return home. The man closed his eyes for one brief moment. When he opened them again, grief had become something colder. Something far more dangerous. Who? His voice barely rose above a whisper. Who did this to my sons? No one answered. Julian simply stared at him. For the first time since entering the forgotten nursery, Alpha King Rowan Ashford realized that rescuing his children would be far easier than convincing them he was their father once again. Rowan did not move. Years of war had taught him that frightened wolves attacked anything that stepped too close. These were not soldiers. They were his sons. And they feared him more than the darkness that had imprisoned them. He slowly knelt until his eyes rested level with Julian's. The movement surprised the boy. Kings did not kneel. Not even before princes. Especially not before frightened children. Julian's claws remained extended. His thin shoulders trembled from exhaustion. Still he refused to step aside. If you hurt her. His voice shook. You hurt us. The words pierced deeper than any blade Rowan had faced in battle. His gaze shifted toward the young Omega. Dust stained her gray dress. Tiny burns covered her hands from years beside kitchen fires. Her cloak wrapped around Oliver like the wings of a mother protecting her child. She looked exhausted. Yet she met the Alpha King's eyes without hatred. Only caution. Only concern for the boys behind her. Rowan slowly lowered his head. I will not harm her. No one in this room will be harmed again. Julian searched his face. As though weighing every word. Theo quietly tugged his brother's sleeve. He sounds different. Julian did not answer. Oliver peeked from behind Alara's arm. His wide silver eyes studied the stranger. The little boy remembered almost nothing. Months of fear had erased too many memories. To him, safety had become a simple thing. Warm soup. A blanket. A gentle voice. Alara. Nothing else mattered. The great black wolf lay quietly beside the fireplace. Its enormous head rested upon crossed paws. Every few moments it looked toward Rowan before returning its attention to the children. Its instincts had already decided. These pups belonged here. They must never be left alone again. A sudden rush of footsteps echoed through the hidden passage. Steel scraped against stone. Captain Elias Ward appeared first, followed by 4 royal guards. The veteran commander froze. His face drained of color. Your Majesty. His eyes found the 3 children. Moon above. One guard whispered a prayer. Another removed his helmet without realizing he had done so. Silence spread through the forgotten nursery. Even the soldiers understood they had stepped into something far greater than a military crisis. Rowan rose slowly. Seal every entrance to the western wing. No messenger leaves the palace. No council member enters this place without my command. Captain Elias bowed immediately. At once, Your Majesty. The guards hurried away. Only Elias remained. His gaze lingered on the princes. He had escorted them through these halls countless times before the king departed for war. Now they looked almost unrecognizable. Julian had become little more than skin stretched over determination. Theo's clothes hung loosely from his small frame. Oliver weighed scarcely more than a winter blanket. Elias clenched his jaw. Someone will answer for this. Rowan never looked away from his sons. They already will. His voice carried no anger. That frightened Elias more than if the king had roared. Alara gently helped Oliver finish the last spoonful of broth. The child struggled to stay awake. His head rested against her shoulder. She brushed tangled hair away from his forehead. He still feels warm. Rowan's attention immediately shifted. Warm? She nodded. His fever rises every evening. Some nights it eases before dawn. Some nights. She stopped speaking. Rowan understood the unfinished sentence. Some nights she had not known whether the child would survive until morning. May I? He took one careful step forward. Oliver immediately buried his face deeper into Alara's cloak. His tiny fingers tightened until his knuckles turned white. Rowan stopped. The distance between them measured only a few feet. It felt impossible to cross. Alara looked down at the little prince. Oliver. The king wishes to see if you are all right. The child did not answer. After several moments he whispered without lifting his head. Will she stay? Rowan felt his chest tighten. If she wishes. Oliver slowly looked up. Only then did Rowan kneel once more. Very carefully, he reached out and touched the back of his son's small hand with one finger. The child flinched. But he did not pull away. That tiny victory felt greater than any battlefield Rowan had ever conquered. He noticed faint scars around Oliver's wrists. The same silver burns. The same cruel restraints. His breathing became dangerously slow. Who chained children? Who looked upon innocent heirs and saw only tools? Julian suddenly spoke. The man with the black ring. Rowan's eyes lifted instantly. What did you say? Julian hesitated. His courage seemed to drain away the moment the memory returned. The man. He said. Father wasn't coming home. Theo lowered his head. He said the king chose war instead of us. Silence settled over the nursery. Even the fireless room seemed colder. Rowan closed his eyes. Someone had not only imprisoned his sons. Someone had stolen their hope. And whoever wore that black ring had spent months teaching 3 little princes that their father had abandoned them forever. The nursery remained silent long after Julian's words faded. Father chose war instead of us. Rowan did not defend himself. He could have spoken of frozen front lines. Of villages that would have burned if the army had retreated. Of thousands of innocent wolves who depended on the crown. None of those truths belonged here. Not in front of 3 children who had spent countless nights believing they had been forgotten. Instead he asked the only question that mattered. Who told you that? Julian looked toward the cold fireplace. The man with the black ring. He came after the doors were locked. Theo nodded. Sometimes he brought the bitter milk. Sometimes another woman carried it. Oliver hid his face again. No bitter milk. No more. His frightened whisper echoed through the abandoned nursery. Alara gently rubbed circles across the little boy's back until his breathing steadied. Rowan noticed every movement. She never rushed them. Never forced them. Never interrupted their fear. She simply remained. Steady. Patient. Present. Everything he had failed to be. Captain Elias stepped closer. Your Majesty. The royal physician has already been summoned. No. Rowan's answer came instantly. Not a single physician attached to the palace. Elias looked surprised. Then understanding slowly crossed his face. You believe the reports were false. I believe nothing written inside this palace until I see proof with my own eyes. Rowan turned toward one of the guards standing near the entrance. Ride north. Bring Maribel. The village healer from Frostpine. Tell her the Alpha King requests her aid. The guard bowed without hesitation. He disappeared into the hidden passage at once. Theo watched him leave. You're sending someone outside the palace. Yes. Why? Because I need someone the children do not fear. The answer hung quietly in the room. Julian lowered his eyes. The king noticed. I know you do not trust me. Julian remained silent. You have every reason not to. Alara looked toward Rowan for the first time since he had entered. His words carried no pride. Only regret. She saw a soldier who had returned home expecting gratitude and found only evidence of his own absence. Outside the hidden corridor another group of guards approached. This time their footsteps stopped well before the nursery. Captain Elias stepped outside to meet them. Moments later he returned. My king. Lord Marius requests an audience immediately. Rowan's expression hardened. He already knows. It appears so. Tell him I am occupied. He insists the council must be informed at once. The council will learn what I decide they learn. No sooner. No later. Elias bowed again. As you command. He disappeared once more. Alara watched Rowan carefully. You do not trust your own counsel. Not anymore. What changed? I found my sons beneath my own palace. No one spoke after that. The answer required nothing more. Oliver slowly drifted to sleep against Alara's shoulder. Theo sat beside her with his empty bowl resting in his lap. Julian remained standing. Always watching. Always listening. Rowan looked around the forgotten nursery. Dust covered every shelf. The fireplace had not been cleaned in months. One narrow window had been sealed with rotten boards. Tiny blankets barely covered 3 growing boys. His eyes settled upon the wooden bowls. Freshly washed. Used every night. You carried food here yourself? Alara nodded. Every evening. For how long? 12 nights. Only 12? She hesitated. 12 nights since I found the passage. I don't know how long they were alone before that. Rowan closed his eyes. 12 nights. Nearly 2 weeks. His sons had survived because one anonymous kitchen servant chose compassion over obedience. What if you had never heard them? Alara answered without hesitation. Then someone else should have. The words landed quietly. No accusation. No anger. Only truth. Rowan looked at her worn hands again. Burns from hot ovens. Small cuts from kitchen knives. Fingers roughened by years of labor. Hands that had never held power. Yet those same hands had accomplished what an entire royal court had failed to do. They had kept 3 princes alive. A faint scratching sound interrupted the silence. Julian stiffened instantly. He's back. Everyone turned toward the hidden passage. The sound came again. Not loud. Not threatening. Just enough to make every child tense with fear. Bran lifted his massive head. His ears moved forward. Then the great wolf relaxed and gave a soft huff. Captain Elias stepped inside. Only me. Julian slowly lowered the broken chair leg he had instinctively grabbed. Elias noticed. He quietly removed his own sword belt before entering farther into the room. I thought weapons might make the boys uncomfortable. For the first time, Theo looked directly at him. You left it outside? Yes. Why? Because trust usually enters a room before soldiers should. Julian studied the captain for several long seconds. Then he gave one small nod. It was not acceptance. But it was no longer rejection. Elias turned toward Rowan. The western wing has been sealed. No messenger has left the palace. Good. And one more thing, Your Majesty. Lord Marius is coming here himself. Rowan slowly rose to his feet. Then let him come. This time. He will answer my questions before I answer his. Lord Marius Vane arrived without haste. His polished boots echoed through the abandoned corridor with measured confidence. 2 council guards followed several steps behind him. Neither crossed the nursery threshold. Marius paused in the doorway. His expression became one of carefully practiced relief. Your Majesty. Praise the moon you found the princes alive. Rowan did not answer. The first counselor's eyes swept across the room. Julian. Theo. Oliver. They lingered on each child for only a heartbeat before settling upon Alara. An Omega kitchen servant. Covered in dust. Holding the youngest prince against her shoulder. A flicker crossed his eyes. Gone almost before it appeared. But Rowan saw it. Surprise. Not relief. Not joy. Surprise. You returned sooner than expected, Marius continued. The northern campaign ended early. It did. I regret that I was not present to welcome you. Rowan's voice remained calm. You seem remarkably informed for someone who was not present. Marius smiled politely. News travels quickly through a palace. Apparently. Silence stretched between them. Theo quietly shifted closer to Alara. Oliver never looked toward the doorway. Only Julian continued watching Marius. His breathing had changed. Faster. Shallower. His fingers tightened around the broken chair leg. Rowan noticed. So did Bran. The great black wolf slowly rose to his feet. A low rumble vibrated deep inside his chest. Marius glanced toward the animal. Your wolf appears unsettled. He has excellent instincts. Rowan never broke eye contact. Marius folded his hands behind his back. May I speak with the princes? No. The answer came without hesitation. Perhaps they may remember something useful. They will remember when they are ready. Not before. Marius inclined his head. Of course. My only concern is their recovery. Julian suddenly whispered. No. Everyone turned toward him. The boy stared directly at Marius. Theo instinctively moved beside his older brother. Oliver hid deeper inside Alara's cloak. Julian slowly lifted one trembling finger. Him. The nursery became perfectly still. Rowan felt every soldier stop breathing. Julian's voice barely rose above a whisper. He came here. Theo nodded immediately. The black ring. Oliver began shaking. No bitter milk. Please. No bitter milk. Alara wrapped both arms around him. You're safe. No one will give you that again. Marius looked genuinely puzzled. Your Majesty, I fear the poor child is confused. Months of isolation can distort memory. Can it? Rowan asked quietly. Naturally. Trauma often creates false associations. Julian took one determined step forward. You lied. The words carried surprising strength. You said father chose the war. You said he wasn't coming back. Marius remained composed. Your Majesty, the boy is frightened. He deserves compassion rather than interrogation. Rowan slowly approached until only a few feet separated them. One question. Certainly. When you entered this room, what was the first thing you asked? Marius blinked once. I expressed relief. No. Rowan's voice became colder. You asked how much the eldest prince remembered. For the first time, the counselor's smile weakened. Only slightly. I merely wished to understand the circumstances. Most people discovering 3 starving children would ask whether they were injured. Whether they had eaten. Whether they required a healer. You asked what Julian remembered. Marius answered carefully. Because memory determines any investigation. Does it? Or does memory threaten someone? Neither man moved. Captain Elias quietly stepped inside the nursery. He stopped beside Rowan. A lone rider has departed, Your Majesty. The village healer will arrive before dawn. Excellent. Marius turned toward Elias. A village healer? Surely the royal medical household will not enter this wing. Rowan interrupted. Not until I understand why 3 healthy princes disappeared beneath my own palace. Marius lowered his eyes respectfully. You suspect betrayal. I suspect failure. Whether it came through malice or incompetence remains to be discovered. The counselor nodded. Then I trust the council will assist your investigation. Eventually. For now. No member of the royal council enters the western wing without my permission. Something changed behind Marius's calm expression. It lasted only a heartbeat. Long enough for Rowan to recognize it. Control. The man had just lost it. As you command, Your Majesty. Marius bowed with flawless courtesy. He turned toward the corridor. Just before leaving, he glanced once more at Julian. The boy instinctively stepped backward. Bran moved between them. The enormous black wolf exposed every tooth in his mouth. A deep warning growl rolled through the forgotten nursery. The council guards froze. Even Marius stopped walking. Rowan never called Bran back. After several long seconds, the first counselor continued down the corridor without another word. His footsteps slowly disappeared into the darkness. Only after complete silence returned did Julian release the breath he had been holding. That was him. I'm sure. Rowan placed one hand gently on his son's shoulder. This time. I believe you. Outside the western wing, Lord Marius Vane continued walking without looking back. His face remained calm until he disappeared around the final stone corner. Only then did his hand slowly tighten around the black thorn ring resting upon his finger. For the first time in many years, someone inside Stormhold had begun asking the wrong questions. And that made the Alpha King far more dangerous than any enemy waiting beyond the kingdom's borders. Morning arrived beneath a sky covered by heavy gray clouds. No sunlight reached the forgotten nursery. Only the fire Alara had finally coaxed to life filled the room with gentle warmth. Oliver slept curled beneath her cloak. One tiny hand still clung to the edge of her sleeve, as though letting go might cause her to disappear. Theo sat beside Bran, carefully brushing the great wolf's thick black fur with his fingers. The enormous werewolf accepted every touch without moving. Julian remained awake. He had not slept more than a few minutes at a time. Every sound beyond the nursery walls still made him look toward the door. Rowan noticed. He noticed everything now. He quietly removed his heavy leather cloak and draped it over Julian's shoulders. The boy looked up in surprise. You'll be cold. I've survived colder places. Julian lowered his eyes. This place is colder. The simple answer left Rowan speechless. Not because of winter. Because no child should ever have called this place home. Captain Elias returned shortly after sunrise. He was accompanied by an elderly woman wearing a plain green traveling coat stained by years of mountain roads. She carried no jeweled medical case. Only a weathered leather satchel hanging from one shoulder. Her silver hair had been tied into a simple braid. Kind eyes studied the room before they studied the patients. Maribel stopped several steps inside the nursery. She did not approach the children. She simply smiled. Good morning. No one answered. She seemed completely unbothered. Instead, she lowered herself onto the floor beside the fireplace. Her old knees cracked loudly. Well, that sounded older than I intended. Theo blinked. Bran lifted one ear. Even Julian looked confused. Maribel smiled again. If your knees ever start making that sound, I recommend avoiding stairs forever. Theo couldn't help himself. He laughed. The quiet sound startled Oliver awake. The little prince blinked sleepily before realizing where he was. His frightened expression softened when he saw Alara beside him. Maribel waited. She never reached for him. Never asked him to come closer. Instead, she opened her satchel. Inside rested smooth wooden animals carved by hand. A tiny fox. A rabbit. A wolf pup. She placed the smallest wolf on the floor. My grandson carved this. He's convinced it looks fierce. Personally, I think it looks rather confused. Oliver stared at the toy. After a long moment, he slowly crawled toward it. Maribel remained perfectly still. Only when Oliver picked up the carving did she quietly ask. May I sit beside you? The little prince looked toward Alara. She nodded gently. If you want. Oliver gave the smallest nod imaginable. Maribel moved only one step closer. Thank you. She warmed her hands beside the fire before touching him. Cold hands make children nervous. Warm hands feel safer. She rested 2 fingers lightly against Oliver's wrist. Then his forehead. Then beneath his jaw. No frightening instruments. No silver tools. Only patience. She listened to his breathing. Watched the color of his eyes. Examined faint bruises hidden beneath his sleeves. Her expression slowly changed. She looked toward Rowan. How long has he been sleeping this deeply? Elara answered. Some nights he barely wakes at all. Other nights he cries without opening his eyes. Maribel nodded. Then she examined Theo. The middle prince allowed her near more easily. Even so, he flinched whenever she reached too quickly. She slowed every movement, always letting him see what came next. Finally she turned toward Julian. The eldest prince remained standing. I don't need a healer. Perhaps not. Maribel smiled kindly. But I could use your help. Julian frowned. Mine? These old eyes aren't what they used to be. I need someone brave enough to tell me if my lantern is burning too brightly. Julian glanced toward the lantern hanging near the fireplace. It's fine. Wonderful. That means you're already helping. The unexpected answer made him hesitate. Slowly. Very slowly. He allowed Maribel to examine the burns around his wrists. The old healer never touched the scars immediately. She asked permission first. May I? Julian looked at Rowan. Then at Elara. Finally he whispered. Okay. Maribel carefully rolled back his sleeve. Silence settled across the nursery. The burns formed perfect circles around both wrists. Dark. Raised. Painfully familiar. Royal silver restraints. She examined them for several moments before looking toward Rowan. These were not accidental. No. They were designed. Designed? To suppress a young wolf. Repeated exposure weakens instinct. Delays shifting. Creates exhaustion. Loss of appetite. Confusion. Theo slowly lowered his head. The bitter milk. Maribel looked toward him. Tell me about it. Theo glanced nervously toward Julian. The oldest prince gave a small nod. It smelled like wet leaves. And old trees after rain. Sometimes metal. Sometimes flowers. Oliver whispered. Bitter. Always bitter. Maribel slowly closed her eyes. Silverroot. The word seemed to steal all warmth from the room. Rowan stepped forward. You're certain? As certain as I am standing here. She looked back toward the children. Someone has been giving them carefully measured doses for months. Enough to keep them weak. Enough to prevent healthy transformation. Enough to make the world believe they were naturally fading. Can they recover? Maribel met Rowan's eyes. Yes. If the poison stops today. If they are fed properly. If they are allowed to feel safe again. Then she added the words Rowan feared most. But this was never meant to kill them quickly. It was meant to keep them alive. Weak enough for someone else's purpose. The fire crackled softly. No one spoke. Because every person in the nursery understood the same terrible truth. Whoever had hidden the princes had never intended for them to die. They had intended for them to be used. The words lingered in the nursery long after Maribel fell silent. Used. Not rescued. Not protected. Used. Rowan slowly turned toward the narrow window where pale morning light struggled through cracked wooden boards. Someone had built an entire lie around his children. The false reports. The abandoned nursery. The poisoned milk. Every piece belonged to the same design. Captain Elias stepped beside him. Your Majesty. The messenger from Frostpine was followed. Rowan looked at him. By whom? 2 riders wearing no royal colors. They turned back when they saw our patrol. Maribel frowned. Someone wanted to know whether I accepted the king's invitation. Rowan's jaw tightened. Then they already know you are here. Which means they are worried. or preparing. Neither possibility pleased him. Oliver suddenly tugged gently at Alara's sleeve. Hungry. She smiled softly. That is a much better problem than yesterday. She rose and carried the empty bowls toward the small preparation table near the fireplace. Theo immediately followed. Can I help? You may carry the bread. Julian hesitated before quietly joining them. What about me? Alara handed him a small kettle. Fresh water. The eldest prince accepted it without another word. Rowan watched in silence. No one had instructed the boys. No commands. No royal discipline. No formal lessons. Yet they naturally worked together around her. Like a family. Maribel noticed the king's expression. Children remember who makes them feel safe. Not who gives the orders. Her quiet observation struck deeper than she intended. Rowan lowered his eyes. For months he had commanded armies across the northern frontier. He had never realized that the smallest victories were won beside an ordinary breakfast. Theo carefully arranged 3 pieces of bread. Oliver proudly carried tiny wooden spoons. Julian checked the fire before placing the kettle above the flames. Each child instinctively looked toward Alara after finishing the task. Waiting. Not for approval. For reassurance. You all did wonderfully. 3 tired smiles appeared almost together. The nursery felt warmer than before. Until hurried footsteps echoed from the hidden passage. Captain Elias reached for his sword. Bran rose immediately. A young scout hurried into the room. His breathing was uneven. My king. The Western Messenger Tower has been searched. And? 3 official reports concerning the princes were missing. Only those? No. The record showing your early return from the northern campaign has disappeared as well. Rowan exchanged a long look with Elias. Someone is destroying evidence. Or preparing new evidence. Elias nodded grimly. Maribel closed her medical satchel. If they are changing records now, they know time is running out. The scout continued. There is something else. A rider left the palace less than an hour ago through the eastern service gate. Whose authorization? The order carried the first counselor's seal. Destination? Moonwater Abbey. Silence filled the room. Theo looked toward Rowan. Is that where we were supposed to go? Yes. Julian slowly lowered his eyes. But we never went there. No. You never did. Rowan turned toward Elias. Choose your fastest rider. He leaves immediately. Tell the monks no document carrying my seal is to be trusted unless delivered by one of my personal guards. At once, Your Majesty. Elias disappeared without another question. Maribel watched him leave. You expect forged letters. I expect desperate people to make desperate mistakes. Oliver quietly climbed into Rowan's lap before realizing what he had done. The little prince froze. Rowan remained perfectly still. He did not reach for him. Did not speak. Did not move. After several uncertain seconds, Oliver leaned against the king's armored chest. Only a little. Only enough to rest for a moment. Rowan felt tears threaten for the first time in years. He swallowed them before anyone noticed. Almost anyone. Alara noticed. She said nothing. Some moments became smaller when spoken aloud. Julian watched carefully. His expression softened by the slightest amount. Theo smiled. See? Oliver isn't scared anymore. Oliver immediately protested. Little scared. Everyone in the room smiled. Even Bran released a quiet huff that sounded suspiciously like amusement. The warmth lasted only a heartbeat. Another guard appeared in the passage. His face had turned completely pale. Your Majesty. Captain Elias sent me back. The rider never reached the eastern bridge. Rowan slowly stood, carefully helping Oliver back onto the blanket. Explain. The king's messenger was found beside the river. Alive? Barely. His horse was gone. His message was gone. And carved into the bridge railing. The guard hesitated. There was only one symbol. Rowan already knew the answer before the words were spoken. Black thorns surrounding the letter V. The room fell silent once again. The enemy was no longer hiding in the shadows. He was challenging the Alpha King openly. And for the first time since returning home, Rowan realized the conspiracy was no longer trying to conceal the truth. It was racing to reach the princes before he uncovered all of it. The wounded messenger survived until sunset. Barely. Maribel cleaned the deep cut across his shoulder while Rowan waited outside the small chamber beside the nursery. No one interrupted the silence. At last the messenger opened his eyes. Your Majesty. His voice was little more than a whisper. They knew my route. How many? 3 riders. Council colors? No. Plain cloaks. Military discipline. They never spoke. Only one carried a black ring carved with thorns. Rowan's expression never changed. Did they take the letter? Yes. Anything else? The messenger struggled to remember. One of them said. He stopped to catch his breath. The eclipse comes before the king understands. Maribel looked toward Rowan. The eclipse. 6 nights. Exactly. The messenger reached beneath his torn cloak. I hid this. His trembling fingers produced a small strip of cloth stained with dried blood. It had been torn from one attacker's sleeve. Captain Elias examined it carefully. Dark blue fabric. Council issue. The stitching belonged to palace guards. Not soldiers. Not mercenaries. Palace guards. Someone inside Stormhold had ridden with the attackers. Rowan folded the cloth into his palm. Rest. The messenger bowed his head weakly. I failed. No. Rowan answered quietly. You brought me what they failed to destroy. That is enough. Outside the chamber, Elias fell into step beside the king. The circle is shrinking. Rowan nodded. Too quickly. They walked together through the western corridor. Servants disappeared the moment they saw the Alpha King approaching. Whispers followed behind every closed door. The princes have returned. The council is meeting again. The king sealed the western wing. Rumors spread faster than truth. By the time Rowan reached the forgotten nursery, dusk had settled across the palace. Inside, Theo was teaching Oliver how to stack small wooden blocks into a crooked tower. Each time the tower collapsed, Oliver laughed. The sound echoed warmly through the room. Julian sat beside Bran, quietly sharpening the broken chair leg that had become his makeshift spear. Alara looked up as Rowan entered. You missed supper. I wasn't hungry. She handed him a wooden bowl anyway. You should eat. He accepted it without argument. Theo looked delighted. She makes everyone eat. Even Bran. The great wolf lifted his head in mild protest. Oliver giggled. Bran likes soup. Bran likes meat. Theo corrected him. Lots of meat. Even Rowan smiled. Only for a moment. Maribel quietly watched from the fireplace. Healing had already begun. Not through medicine. Through ordinary moments. Shared meals. Small laughter. Safe silence. Then Julian suddenly stopped sharpening the wooden spear. Someone's coming. Every head turned toward the hidden passage. Bran stood instantly. His ears flattened. A deep growl rolled through the nursery. Captain Elias entered only seconds later. My king. We found another hidden room. Where? Beneath the abandoned records archive. What was inside? Nothing now. It had been emptied recently. But one wall remained untouched. Elias unfolded a rough charcoal sketch copied from the stone. Ancient symbols covered the page. 3 circles connected beneath a full moon. At the center stood the royal wolf crest. Maribel leaned closer. I've seen this before. Where? Very old temple records. Long before the kingdom was founded. She traced one trembling finger across the drawing. 3 royal heirs. 1 alpha bloodline. 1 lunar eclipse. The vault. Rowan looked toward her. You believe the legend is real. I believe someone else does. Silence returned. Julian slowly walked toward the sketch. His eyes widened. I've seen this. Everyone turned toward him. Where? On the floor. What floor? The room below. The man with the black ring took us there once. Theo nodded immediately. There were shiny stones. Oliver whispered. Big door. Julian closed his eyes, struggling to remember. There were 3 places to stand. 1 for me. 1 for Theo. 1 for Oliver. Rowan felt his pulse slow. Not from calm. From certainty. The conspiracy had never been about hiding the princes forever. It had been about keeping them alive until the eclipse. The realization settled over every person in the nursery. 6 nights. Only 6 nights remained before someone intended to use 3 innocent children to open a door that had remained sealed for generations. And somewhere inside Stormhold, Lord Marius Vane was already preparing for that night. Night settled over Stormhold with unnatural stillness. The palace appeared peaceful from the outside. Golden lanterns glowed across marble balconies. Musicians played softly inside the eastern halls. Servants carried silver trays through elegant corridors. No one looking from beyond the castle walls would have guessed that the kingdom stood only days away from disaster. Deep beneath that calm surface, Rowan's war council gathered inside the abandoned records chamber. Not a single council member had been invited. Only Captain Elias, Maribel, Elara, and the 3 princes. The ancient chamber smelled of dust and damp stone. Broken shelves leaned against cracked walls. Thousands of forgotten records had once been stored there. Now only empty spaces remained. Someone had cleared them away recently. Rowan studied the floor. Fresh scrape marks crossed the stone. Heavy crates. Moved within the past week. Someone had worked quickly. Someone who believed no one would ever come searching here. Captain Elias knelt beside the marks. 4 people. Perhaps 5. They carried weight. Not dragged. Lifted. Military discipline. Maribel slowly approached the carved wall. Her fingertips brushed across faded moon symbols almost erased by time. The carvings formed 3 circles surrounding a larger crescent. Below them rested an inscription worn nearly smooth. She closed her eyes. My grandmother spoke of this once. Rowan looked toward her. She called it the Oath of the 3 Heirs. No one believed it was real. Julian stepped closer. This is where we stood. He pointed toward the smallest circle. Oliver stood here. Theo here. I stood there. Theo frowned. The man with the ring kept telling us not to move. Oliver quietly hid behind Alara's skirt. Dark room. Scary room. Alara gently rested one hand on his shoulder. You don't have to remember anything else. Oliver nodded gratefully. Rowan looked toward the center of the carving. If all 3 boys had remained here during the eclipse. Maribel finished the thought. Something beneath the palace would have awakened. Captain Elias frowned. A weapon? Perhaps. Perhaps something older than weapons. Legends rarely survive for centuries without hiding at least one truth. Julian slowly looked around the chamber. There was another door. Where? Behind the moon. Everyone turned. Julian pointed toward the largest crescent carved into the wall. The man pressed something. The wall opened. Elias immediately searched the stone. Nothing moved. No visible mechanism. He pressed every carving within reach. Still nothing. Rowan stepped beside Julian. "Show me exactly where." The boy hesitated. Then slowly reached upward. "Not here. Higher. A little more." His fingers stopped beneath the worn carving of a crescent moon. "Right there." Rowan pressed firmly. For several seconds. Nothing happened. Then deep inside the wall, ancient gears groaned. Stone shifted. Dust exploded into the air. A narrow passage slowly revealed itself. Cold air rushed outward. Brand immediately stepped in front of the children. Every hair along his back stood upright. The great wolf released a warning growl unlike any they had heard before. Not anger. Instinct. Something inside the passage frightened even a battle wolf. Captain Elias drew his sword. Rowan shook his head. "No. Wait." Silence settled once again. From somewhere far below came a faint metallic sound. One. Then another. Like chains moving deep underground. Maribel's face turned pale. "This passage has been opened recently." "How can you tell?" "The hinges are clean. Ancient doors gather dust. Someone has been maintaining this one." Theo grabbed Julian's sleeve. "Are we going down there?" "Not tonight." Rowan answered without taking his eyes off the darkness. "No one enters until I know exactly what waits below." A faint smile appeared on Alara's face. For the first time since meeting him, she heard the Alpha King choosing caution over pride. Elias carefully sealed the hidden doorway again. "We'll station guards. Only my own men. Change them every 2 hours. No written orders. No messenger reports. Everything verbal." Elias nodded. "Understood." As they prepared to leave the chamber, Brand suddenly turned toward the corridor behind them. The great wolf snarled. A low, violent sound echoed through the stone hall. Rowan spun immediately. "Who's there?" No answer. Only darkness. Captain Elias rushed into the corridor with 2 soldiers. Moments later he returned holding something wrapped in black cloth. He unfolded it beneath the lantern. A polished ring rolled across the stone floor. Black metal. Twisting thorns. The letter V engraved at its center. No one had seen who dropped it. No one had heard anyone flee. Someone had been standing close enough to hear every word they had spoken. And someone wanted the Alpha King to know that the game between them had entered its final stage. The black thorn ring rested in Rowan's palm long after everyone else had fallen silent. Its polished surface reflected the lantern light like frozen midnight. Captain Elias examined the inside of the band. Fresh scratches. Someone removed it in haste. Or left it intentionally. A message. A challenge. Rowan closed his hand around the ring. "Then we answer it. Not with anger. With proof." He looked toward Julian. "Can you remember anything else about the room beneath the palace?" The young prince remained quiet for a long moment. His eyes drifted toward the hidden passage. There were candles. Not many. 3. Always 3. Did anyone else come besides the man with the black ring? Julian nodded slowly. The woman with the bitter milk. Sabine. Maribel whispered. The royal healer. Theo looked frightened. She smiled when we cried. Oliver buried his face against Alara's shoulder. No more milk. Never again. Alara gently stroked his hair. Never again. I promise. Rowan watched the exchange. The promise carried more weight than any royal decree. Because the children believed it. Captain Elias broke the silence. My king. If Sabine worked with Marius, then every report sent during the campaign was controlled from inside the palace. Rowan nodded. Not only the reports. The healers. The guards. The messenger tower. The quarantine order. Everything. Maribel folded her arms. Corruption this deep survives only when good people become afraid. Elias looked down. Too many of us were. Rowan placed one hand on the captain's shoulder. Not anymore. They returned to the nursery together. The old room felt different now. The fire burned steadily. Fresh blankets had replaced the mold-covered bedding. Warm bread rested beside the bowls waiting for supper. Tiny changes. Yet together they transformed the forgotten prison into something resembling a home. Theo immediately ran toward Bran. Come help. We're building a fortress. The great wolf looked completely unimpressed. Theo interpreted the silence as agreement. Oliver carefully arranged wooden blocks beside the fireplace. Julian stood beside Rowan. Not speaking. Simply standing close enough that their shoulders almost touched. The distance between father and son had not disappeared. But it had become smaller. Alara quietly prepared another pot of broth. The familiar scent filled the room. Rowan approached. You've done this alone every night. She nodded. It never felt like I was alone. The boys were here. He looked toward the children. I don't know how to repay what you've done. She gently stirred the broth. Protect them. That's enough. He remained silent. Then he answered with complete certainty. I will. A loud knock echoed through the western corridor. Every child froze. Bran immediately stood. Captain Elias opened the door only a hand's width. A trusted scout waited outside. His breathing was heavy from running. Your Majesty. The lower palace guards have reported movement beneath the western foundations. How many? Unknown. But lanterns were seen where no lanterns should be. Rowan's expression hardened. They've begun. Elias immediately reached for his sword. Do we move tonight? No. Not yet. Rowan looked toward the three princes. Our enemy wants us to rush. We won't. He turned toward Elias. Double every guard around this wing. No one enters without my voice or yours. Yes, Your Majesty. Maribel added quietly. And keep the children together. Whatever the ritual requires. It was designed for all three heirs. Separate them from everyone else. Never from each other. Julian reached for Theo's hand. Theo took Oliver's. The three brothers stood together before the fire. Rowan looked at them. Then at Alara. Then at Bran. For the first time since returning from war, he finally understood what his kingdom truly depended on. Not the throne. Not the council. Not the army. 3 frightened children. 1 courageous Omega. And the family they were slowly becoming together. Outside the forgotten nursery, hidden beneath layers of ancient stone, another door slowly opened. Torchlight flickered across a vast underground chamber untouched for centuries. Lord Marius Vane stood before 3 massive stone seals carved with wolves beneath a darkened moon. He turned the black thorn ring that still rested upon his finger. The Alpha King believes he is protecting the heirs. A hooded figure stepped from the shadows. Will he reach the vault in time? Marius looked toward the ceiling where the palace stood far above. No. By the time the eclipse darkens the sky, the princes will open the moon vault for me. And when they do, no king will ever sit upon the moon throne again unless I allow it. The final torch flared. Darkness swallowed the chamber. Above, in the forgotten nursery, Rowan remained awake beside his sons until dawn. For the first time in months, the 3 princes slept without fear. For the first time in years, the Alpha King understood that the greatest battle of his life would not be fought on a battlefield. it would be fought for his family.